Good evening. I'm George Eiskamp, CEO of GroundMetrics. I'd like to begin with a question for you. Have you ever tried to find something in the dark? Like a light switch? Maybe you fumbled around, hit the doorknob, knocked something over looking for it. Well, that's how oil companies find oil underground. We have developed a new type of electromagnetic sensor for seeing deep underground. We're using this unique patented technology for exploration and production of oil, gas, and precious metals, as well as monitoring underground carbon dioxide storage. Due to time limitations tonight, we'll focus on oil and gas, but feel free to ask questions about the other applications at the end. Even though we may be desensitized by outrageous gas prices, it sure would be nice for them to be lower. I don't know about you, but I haven't bought premium gas in years because my daughter's at that fun age. I may switch, though, when she starts rebelling. The era of easy oil is over. Increasing demand coupled with decreasing supplies has raised gas prices year over year for decades. One way to reduce price is to increase supply. As a result of such high gas prices, oil companies are developing exotic new production methods. You may have heard about some of these in the news recently, such as fracking and horizontal drilling. Well, GroundMetrics can increase oil supply by taking a different approach and helping oil companies extract more oil out of existing oil fields. There's an old adage that says the best place to find oil is an oil field. This is because, on average, oil companies are only extracting 1/3 of the oil from a given oil field. At most, they're able to extract a whopping 50% of the oil from an oil field. This means they're leaving over half the oil in the ground. This is in part because it is difficult to see what's going on deep underground, and therefore difficult to see where the oil is. GroundMetrics solves this problem. Here's an illustration of an oil field from the top down. The black dots represent oil wells. The standard method for them to see where the oil is by putting instruments down an oil well, 3,000 to over 10,000 feet deep, and then they're able to see up to 100 feet in all directions around the oil well. Now they do this at every oil well, and then they extrapolate to determine where the oil is. So extrapolation is a scientific way of saying they guess. They're guessing where the oil is. Now for high-end services, they put these instruments down 2 oil wells, and then they image between those 2 oil wells, and then extrapolate or guess from there. Here the limitation is the oil wells have to be within a 1/4 mile of each other, and they only see line of sight, so you're still missing a lot of area. The GroundMetrics solution does not require putting anything in the oil well, which is safer and cheaper, and it has a range of 5 miles in all directions. This would be like going from a black and white Polaroid picture to a 3D IMAX theater. Here's an illustration of the type of image that can be produced with data acquired from our sensors. Oil companies pay us to send people out in the field with our technology, acquire data, and then produce these images. These are the images we then deliver to the oil company. So essentially, this is what they're purchasing. What you see here are 2 producers on the edges, represented by the gray cylinders going down, and then an injector in the middle, the center gray cylinder in the middle. The blue is the water that's being injected into the field, pushing the oil to the producers. The oil is in red. So as you can see, this is like night vision goggles for underground. This exact same imaging technology can be applied to underground carbon dioxide storage monitoring. We're working with the US Department of Energy on a project to allow organizations to store carbon dioxide underground and therefore move towards being a carbon neutral society. The main advantages of GroundMetrics are that we're able to image an entire oil field anywhere in the world safely and at 1/10 the cost. Now I say 1/10 the cost, but that does not mean we'll charge 1/10 the price. A consortium of prospective customers paid for a side-by-side test of our technology with the competition, and GroundMetrics won. Hopefully we can continue that winning streak through tonight. Seriously though, this is real. We've been to the Middle East on a producing field and demonstrated the validity of the sensor technology. We have pictures of camels to show for it. And we've also been to the driest place on earth very recently, the Atacama Desert. The return on investment is big. Aubrey O'Callahan, a reservoir engineer for the world's largest oil field services company, estimates that by using GroundMetrics technology, oil companies will be able to extract an additional 2 million barrels of oil per square mile from existing oil fields. This means that using GroundMetrics technology, they are able to get a return of investment of $150 million per square mile over the life of the oil field. There are 27,000 square miles of major oil fields worldwide in countries where US companies would be welcome. That's important when you're looking at the total addressable market, which then provides a $24 billion total addressable market every year. So it's the services, the fields get surveyed more than once, so it's recurring. We really have assembled an outstanding management team. I have commercialized 2 new sensor technologies with other companies. My business partner, Andrew Hibbs, is a prolific innovator, the world-leading electromagnetic sensor scientist. We've both founded and sold companies previously. Tota Petrov is our top systems engineer and a rugged Australian extreme trekking hobbyist type which makes a nice combination given our line of work. The whole team is here. We're sitting over in this corner. Please come talk to us to learn more about the company and what we're doing. We're raising $3.5 million to productize our technology, build a sales team, and reach cash flow positive. We project a strong revenue ramp up to $52 million by year 5, with plenty of room to grow thereafter. And this includes solid profits growing to over 60% by the 5th year. We will likely be acquired by one of the world's largest oil field services company. You may recognize some of the names, as they are some of the largest companies in the world. The trend in the industry is for them to acquire early stage companies so they can differentiate their services to the oil companies. Our best comp was acquired for $275 million, and they were not much further along than we are today when they were acquired. Another category of companies that would likely acquire us are geophysics companies. While they're not as large as the oilfield services companies, you can see they're plenty large enough to acquire us for a sizable amount, and there's twice as many of them, which is nice. Since we formed GroundMetrics 2 years ago, things have been moving at a pace of white lightning. 1 year after forming the company, we set 2 records with the Tech Coast Angels. One for the largest raise out of a single chapter. We raised $1.2 million out of the San Diego chapter. And the second was the fastest raise from term sheet to close. This year, our second year in business, we've booked $300,000 in revenue with a brand new technology that hasn't even been fully productized yet. We're working on 3 $3 million opportunities, and we've completed due diligence with the venture capital group of a major oil company and with the UCSD Rady Business School's venture fund. All of our press releases have been picked up by major media outlets. We've won several innovation awards, and we're in the process of making Forbes' most promising companies list. If you want to keep your arms, your legs, and your firstborn instead of trading them for outrageously priced gas, then tonight, support GroundMetrics.
All right. So, how about some questions? I'm scanning the room. It's really, oh, right there somewhere in the middle looks like. Perfect. Yep. Okay, please. You should have brought sunglasses.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I wonder how versatile is your system and algorithm in terms of considering different geographical and geological characteristics of different areas? Because you mentioned like Middle East and then a Chilean desert, right? The characteristics of these two places or areas could be very, very different. And then the underground structure and features. Does your system and algorithm take into consideration of those varying factors?
So if I understand you right, you're asking what are the limitations of the sensor system, both in terms of the topology of where they're running and also the geology of where they're imaging, right? Okay, so for the first question, they can work anywhere. We purposely went to the Atacama Desert, the driest place on Earth, to prove it because that's the most difficult place for these types of technologies to work. We've been to the Middle East, we've gone all around San Diego County, so we won't have any limitations to where they can work. We've even taken them and put them on top of a granite rock at an angle, and they worked fine. In terms of the geology, I'll start with places where I know they work well. So in carbonate geologies, which are common and maybe the only geology in the Middle East, they work beautifully. That's why we went there to test. And the Middle East produces 70% of the world's oil, so it's good that we work in carbonate geologies. And we have done imaging in US geologies, and they've worked fine. I think that geologically, over 90% of the geologies will be okay in. There may be instances where there's thick salt layers that are thicker than maybe a reservoir layer, that the resistivities may be a bit challenging for us, but I would have to defer to Andy to know whether that's even a problem or not, our CTO. So,
how about another question? Oh, back there in the back. Mm-hmm. Give us your name, by the way. Be friendly.
Mark McGarry.
There you go.
2 questions, actually. One, is this a service model or a hardware selling model? I noticed one of your slides you said you're investing some of the money in productizing. So that's first question. Second question is, can you turn this sensor on in, say, a residential neighborhood without wiping everybody out? What kind of radiation is coming off this thing? Can you actually use it in a populated area?
Yes, so to the first question, we are a services company. We're leveraging our proprietary technology so that we can differentiate ourselves and have a competitive advantage. So we have to productize the technology so we can dummy-proof it, hire field workers rather than high-end engineers to use it out in the field. So that's what I meant by productizing it, but we'll use it exclusively for ourselves. And then, absolutely, there's no safety issues with these sensors. You can use them anywhere. We're routinely using them in our backyard up in Sereno Valley, just behind the office. And there's no radiation issues. There's no...
All the lawyers in the room are like, wow, that's great.
There's no electrocution issues. I mean, no problems there.
Cool. How about, yes, Peter Shaw. So Peter asked about the business model and how he generates revenue.
So primarily, the oil companies pay for services. So they pay for a survey, whether it's a seismic survey or our type of survey. It's proprietary data. You go out, you acquire it, you produce the image, you give them the image. They paid for the image before you went and acquired the data. That's the primary model, and that's sort of nice because it's guaranteed money for doing the work, or nearly guaranteed depending on what national oil company you're working with. And then, in order to keep full utilization of the crews, we'll be doing multi-client jobs, which means you go do a job. This would be relevant to exploration, not production. You go and you do a job on a place that's about to be leased by the government to interested oil companies. So you get some to all pay for a fraction of the survey. Then you go do the job, and then you can sell it to them and everybody else that's interested in that land. So you can end up making twice as much as you would on a proprietary job. And then the third piece of the model is doing spec work. So we could go to, the majors would not be interested in this, but smaller producers and independents might not want to pay for the survey, but they might have reasons that their geologist believes there's a good place to add a new well on their oil field or change their injection scheme. And we could come in during downtime and agree to do a survey, and then if they drill a new well and they hit oil, we get some percentage of that production. But it all has to do with us going out with our own crews and our own technology, collecting the data, and then selling the data. Whether we get paid on the front end or the back end is the only thing that changes.
Okay, yes, please, right here in the front. Give us your name, please.
Hi, Chris Snook. Can you address why 5 years you're going to get 52 million, but a comp sold for 500 times sales, let's say at 275, and the disparity in that at 2.5% of the market, it's going to take you 5 years to get that. What the hell's the company worth? That kind of stuff. Because I think there's some here, but I'm not that smart when it comes to this, so maybe you can.
So I hear two questions here. Is how are we going to get to 52 million in 5 years? And the other is how did a comp sell for so much?
Right.
Right? Okay.
And then what are you worth when you hit that in 5 years?
Okay. So there's the three questions. The first one, how do we get...
and one more.
Oh my God.
Why only 2.5% of the market? That's the only other thing I'm not sure.
2.5% of the market?
52 million of 24 billion
Oh,
a
okay,
year.
okay.
I'm just curious as to why.
This is an IQ test. Will he remember the 4 questions? Question number 1.
I'll start at the top, but I might have to come back and get a reminder of what they were. So how do we get to $52 million? This would require 3 crews. Each crew is 4 people each, 4 of our employees each. And then when they go to do the work, they hire temp laborers to help just move the sensors around and stuff. A bunch of them, like 20 temp local laborers. And to get to $50 million, they would have to image 216 square miles that year, which is doable. That's how we get them up with the 3 crews, and it's assuming 60% utilization, so we're taking travel time and time off and everything into account. And that 216 miles is 1.3% of the 27,000 square miles, right? So that's one question, how we get there. Why are we so small then, I think was your 4th question. Well, to be honest, I'm being really conservative. I'm going out and I'm trying to raise money, and if my numbers look wacky, I'm going to lose credibility. So I look at this and think, how fast can I build a company? You know, realistically, how fast are sales going to go? So oil companies move slowly. I think it's a good estimate, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, how about question 2 and 3? Do you remember? What was the second question?
Oh, our comp. I got it.
Okay.
Why did our comp go for so much? The comp that was bought for $275 million had, in the 12 months prior to being acquired, they had between $5 and $10 million in revenues. So how the hell do you get to a multiple from that to $275 million? That's your question, right? So this goes back to these oil field services companies differentiating their services. So they bundle their services to the oil companies. Once a technology has saturated the market, there's no differentiation advantage. So they buy it early, they pay a lot of money if they have to, and they're not looking at it to multiply their revenues based on the incremental value add of the revenues of that company. We were negotiating already with an oil services company, and they didn't like what I wanted to offer to them. And at the end of the day, they said, we don't care if you're charging $3 million for a job. You're going to do X number of jobs times $3 million. We don't care about that. What we care about is we do oil field completions that we sell for $50 million per square mile. We want to add your technology into that, where we're not doing surveys, it's permanently installed for continuous monitoring. We want to add that into it as a feature. We want that exclusively. We might not even add to the price we're charging, but we're going to sell more square miles at $50 million per square mile. You start doing the math on that, and we have, and you go through some line of assumptions, and we get a 3-year net present value based on that sort of value add at $550-something million.
Okay, well,
Your third question was, how much can we be acquired for?
yes.
A crap load, right? I mean, that's what we're doing.
Good. All right, well, while I was up here, I got 2 texts. I got one text from an accountant who wants to make sure you're going to 1099 the laborers.
Already done.
And the second text was from another friend of mine who said you're a sandbagger. Thank you very much.